love it. I love it. I love it. Look at this. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Hey, I'm not surprised.
What's up, my MMA homies? Leyton here for UFC Gambling Addicts. Back with episode 40. Appreciate everyone who watches these breakdowns every week as a fan of the channel. We're close to 1,000 subscribers now. We're 8 subs away, so I'm imagining that's going to be here by the next card. So I appreciate everyone for that, man. Me and Brooks really appreciate it. As for betting for the last card, 9 out of 11 for me. Very decent night. I believe about £150 profit, which is roughly over $200. So not the best night for profit, but any profit is good profit. As always, the giveaway is available, so follow the instructions on the screen. And yeah, catch you guys in the comments. Peace.
And welcome to episode 40 of UFC Addicts. My name is Aaron, and as always, I'm here with my co-host Leyton, and we're here to break down the latest UFC, being the UFC on ESPN 5 over here in the States. I don't know what they're calling it elsewhere, but it is Colby Covington facing off against Robbie Lawler in the main event. And a little fun fact before I turn it over to who we're here to listen to. UFC 40 was subtitled Vendetta. I wish they would bring back the names like that. I'd love to hear what the UFC 240 subtitle would have been. But UFC 40 was Vendetta. Pay-per-view buy rate of 100,000. So for all these times where people are saying nothing's gotten better with MMA, let me just mention the main event was Tito Ortiz versus Ken Shamrock. Also, so Chuck Liddell face off against Babalu as well. And I feel like every single time I read one of these, I'm not sure how often, I'm not paying attention to dates, but obviously they happen less often back then. But Matt Hughes again fighting on this card against some guy named Gil Castillo, who was 8-5, and it was a title bout. So
wow.
Go figure there. Anyways, here's my co-host Lane. What up, buddy?
What's up, bro? What's up? So before we jump into this card, there's not too much to cover from the card the other night, but we will mention Felicia Spencer is tough as nails. She had her moment. She opened up Cyborg with an elbow. She was able to grab a hold of Cyborg at least, but ended up on her back and ate some big shots, but never quit. So yeah, credit to Felicia Spencer and anyone who took her as well. Tough as nails.
Yep. I mean, she definitely did well. I felt like a lot of the criticism of Cyborg after the fight was pretty crazy. Everybody from Dana White, excuse me.
The weed is real. As always in Washington.
Yeah. Legal state here, so we're okay. But just making sure the frog is well fed in my throat here. Anyways, what I was saying, I did not go into the bout giving Felicia Spencer much of a chance. Mm-hmm. I'll be honest, as I always am on here, for better or worse, but I really thought that her even having a plus 400 was as generous as it should be. Anytime I heard someone saying that Felicia Spencer was easy money, I was just confused. Now, yes, I only heard it once or two times, but I did notice, and I just was surprised. And then, yeah, Felicia, I think she was tough in the bout. Cyborg used to really just come out and bully and, try to win within one round. She's appeared to become more of a measured striker as she's moved forward here, which is why that performance against Nunes is all the more confusing from that last fight. But, yeah, nasty cut on Cyborg's head. It didn't even look that bad, but, I mean, you could see after the fight she looked like Frankenstein. Mm-hmm. It was a big gash, and give Felicia Spencer all the credit. It's not a super deep division, so we'll see how she does moving forward, or if this was an aberration and this will end up being her best performance. Mm-hmm. With all due respect, a lot of times I call it, because I come up with random names for these, I call it the Gustafsson effect. Gustafsson almost beat John Jones all those years ago. Some say he did, and he's never gotten to that performance again. Mm-hmm. So Sometimes when your best performance ever comes in still a loss, I mean, it may be that. We'll see. Overall, I really like the card. This, again, it may be a logical inaccuracy in my mind, but often these cards on paper that I will, I even went, what the fuck with this card a few times. But once I was able to research it, and then once I was able to see the fights, I gotta say I was a huge fan. I don't want to forget a couple of fights. As I'm thinking about it, Pantoja and Figueiredo.
Oh, wow.
Incredible.
Amazing fight, mate.
Just such a good fight. And Figueiredo really, really proved something to me in that fight. I was so impressed. Also, Jeff Neal, all aboard that war wagon. It's got to be getting pretty full at this point, but I am amongst those members after picking Nico Price last week. I give him a ton of credit, and I don't think it was a bad stoppage or anything like that. And Jeff Neal's legit. And then the main event.
Yes.
I may not have talked about it much on the podcast, but after the podcast, I was in your ear quite a bit. Just kind of keep saying Frankie has to steal 3 of 5 rounds. He can do that. When I thought of that, I thought he would get at least 1 of 15 takedowns. He got a 48-47 on one judge's scorecard, which is the correct score. 50-45 is ridiculous, in my opinion. And I get StatCast and I get the strike count or whatever. For one, the judges don't have that info, and for two, I question a lot of that info often and how much it really tells the story of the fight. But
I'd agree with you. I feel like, we watched that main event together, and our streams were on sync as well. 50-45 felt it felt like Frankie Edgar had no moments. I definitely gave round 1 to Frankie Edgar. And to hear 50-45, I was a little bit confused. I'm not sure how many people gave all 5 to Max Holloway. I know me and you we was discussing 48-47 a lot, but quite strange to hear 50-45. I really didn't agree with that, but and you can tell on Frankie's face as well when that got read out. Like, his face it switched.
He felt so disrespected.
Yeah, it was wrong, mate. It was wrong.
It was a disrespect. Yeah, and also it's wrong because obviously the judges don't take this into account, and this is really on a side tangent. I will get into, but by showing 50-45, when this is written up for reports, it says 50-45, 50-45, 48-47. A lot of people are not going to have watched that fight because it was not a big pay-per-view, and there's a lot of bullshit fans out there, most of which aren't listening to this, so I can say that. But if you're one of these people, you know who you are, and they will read the headline, they'll see, 50-45, glad I skipped that domination by Max.
Yeah, it just wasn't.
So it's just not, it wasn't what it was, and there were a few times on that card where you saw reactions from losing fighters when they heard a 30-27. I can't remember the other fight that happened in, but I know that happened in another fight where they heard it and they had known they lost, but they grimaced at the fact that they gave all 3 rounds to the other. So I just feel like sometimes judges don't understand what they're saying when they say something like 50-45. And I have nothing to back it up on, as I'm friends with no judges, but I'm just telling you, I have my own weird theories about this, and no one's tuning into those. So other than that, great card. I'm looking forward to breaking down this card coming up. It's an early card for everybody, obviously, but over here in the States, it starts at noon. So you're getting a card that starts at a time an hour or two earlier than when ours normally starts. So you get to be a human for once and enjoy a card in full consciousness. So congratulations. Let's jump in. We start at the 125 division with matchup between Lauren Lucky Murphy and Mara Romero Borella. Just seems like there's a bunch of Borellas. I don't know why. There really isn't. I'll be breaking down Lauren Lucky Murphy, the 35-year-old. And this camp just has so many fighters. MMA Lab, fighter after fighter in all sorts of organizations. So I watched an LFA fight last Friday where it was this guy, I believe Chris or Corey Hamels, out of MMA Lab, and he dominated for 13 minutes before getting DQ'd with the one back of the head punch. So again, my favorite rule continues to be falsely enforced in many ways, but go ahead and check out Bruno Santos's DQ and LFA if you're interested to see what I'm talking about. But back to Lauren Murphy here out of MMA Lab. She's 10-4, mostly kind of a grappler clinch in the on the feet sometimes with the boxing. She's 2-4 in the UFC in her 2 stints so far. She has not fought since June of 2018 when she lost a unanimous decision to Sijara Eubanks, and that was, I believe, Eubanks' last fight at 125. Mm-hmm. Lauren just is kind of a scrapper, as I said, gets in there and does the G word. She grinds it out. She could perhaps get a late finish, but usually not. She's not the worst, but she's close to the bottom, I'll be honest. So she's in the Hannah Cyphers category, in my opinion, with all due respect. But with Borella, we're just not sure what we're getting either. So whoever loses this match is gone, I would think. So I will take what I'd assume is the underdog in Murphy, and I'll take her by a split.
Oh, interesting. Okay, Mara Romero Borella comes into this fight 2-1 inside the UFC. Her debut was pretty quick, pretty impressive. And then I saw her fight Caitlin Chikagian, which was in North Carolina. She was, pretty much outclassed in that fight for 15 minutes. And then you look at her last fight. I'm kind of back to being kind of impressed from her. In her last fight, she was very strong in the clinch, done a lot of work up against the fence, and just, basically made it a grappling match. She looked very strong. She needs to develop her striking more, be more comfortable with that aspect of the game. And, obviously we haven't really seen that yet, but we can only assume that's happening behind closed doors, in her training camp. So yeah, based on her last performance, I'm back to being sort of impressed with Borella. So yeah, we're going to start with a disagreement. I'm going to take Mara Romero Borella to be even more improved than her last fight, to be strong in the clinch again, and to show me something when it's on the feet. So I'll take Borella via decision.
All right, fair enough. I totally understand. And low-level women's MMA, that's all I'll say. So I'm always worse. Okay. Yep. So Borella is the favorite, minus 170. Lauren Murphy at plus 140.
That's all right. It's fair.
I don't know if I would put Borella as a minus 170 favorite just because she eked out a decision against Santos. And but also, the only time that Lauren Murphy has won in the last little while was a split decision over Barb Honchak. Yeah. So, who I don't believe fought ever again in UFC after that. So, the things I can say that I kind of think are positive for, Lauren Murphy, besides the fact that she was the underdog, is that she was preparing for a bout with an Ashley Evans Smith before. So she's been preparing kind of for a bigger grappler, and that is what I believe Borella has to offer. So we'll see.
Okay. Yep. Moving on into the next one. We have Matt Schnell versus Jordan Espinosa, and I'll be breaking down Jordan. Comes into this fight 1-0 inside the UFC. He was 2-0 on the Contender Series. So looking at his debut, against Shelton, pretty impressed. He done a lot of work from the outside, was able to keep circling, landed some pretty nasty calf kicks. Taking a look at Matt Schnell, he's on a 3-fight win streak. I've predicted all 3 of those for Matt Schnell. So this is interesting because I took Shelton against Espinosa. I was wrong there. And apparently, I've been with Matt Schnell and he's winning. So it's an interesting fight. Jordan Espinosa did prove a lot to me in that debut. I really liked his movement. I don't really know what the deciding factor is in this fight. It could be Matt Schnell grappling. He's pretty strong in the clinch. Or it could be Jordan Espinosa able to circle on the outside and point fight. So it's really hard to decide what it's going to be. I'm going to take Jordan Espinosa. I feel like if you stop a guy like Eric Shelton, who's a pretty good guy at 125, and you're able to continue circling and point fight, I think you can do it against Matt Schnell. So I'm going to take Jordan Espinosa via most likely a close decision.
Okay, I will be breaking down Matt Danger Schnell. The 29-year-old is 5'8", 13-4 overall, 3-2 in the UFC, and his last win coming in a great performance at 135 versus Lee Smoka, where he got the finish by the triangle in round 1 and just put on a grappling clinic against a very respectable guy, I think, in Smolka, who really had come into that fight really focused in a groove. Schnell's back down to 125 here, and I think he takes a step back in competition here, with all due respect to Espinosa. I picked Espinosa in his debut against Eric Shelton. I was very impressed with him from the Contenders series and in that fight. But I've been more impressed with how Schnell's looked. I have not been rating Schnell's last 3 fights. I think Schnell's always had dangerous stand-up, and now he's showing the grappling has really progressed. So I think that Espinosa does win with movement and cardio and calf kicks if he does win. But I think Schnell's in a groove right now, and he's going to go back to showing off his stand-up, I think, in this fight, actually. I think that Espinosa is expecting him to try to grapple and put him into the clinch, and I think he may leave himself open on the feet. And I'll take a round 2 TKO for Matt Danger Schnell.
Nice.
So we are starting out with 2 disagreements, and you predicted 3.
Yeah,
so
I was about to say, I predicted 3 before the podcast. It appears it's going to be a strong 4 or 5. So
yeah,
interesting.
we'll see. But yeah, Matt Schnell, this fight I think is perfectly odded. -110 for Schnell, -120 for Espinosa. Schnell did open as a slight underdog at plus 140.
Yeah, I feel Matt Schnell probably closes a slight favourite, and Espinosa a plus 110.
Yeah, just based on their last wins, I would say Schnell's was much more impressive, but also not at 125. So,
yeah,
all things to take into account. Fair disagreement, and yeah, I will move us on to the next fight, which is at 170 between, I always call him just Hannibal Silva or Claudio Silva, but I call him Hannibal, and Cole Williams. The 35-year-old Cole Williams is who I'll be breaking down, and he's making his UFC debut here at 170. He's 11-1 overall. I'm going to try to be nice here, because that's what we should do.
As humans?
So as human beings on this planet we're on, and everything like that. So Cole Williams, I feel like this guy should be debuting on the Contender Series. He has not fought too many guys of note that I see here. He did face Eric Wisely very early on in his career, and he lost to him. Eric Wisely was a pretty random 155er who didn't do a lot in the UFC, pretty much just a small wrestler, actually. But yeah, he hasn't fought since September of last year. He's 35 years old. He's got solid wrestling, I'll say, and good boxing, which I know are 2 things I say for a lot of pretty mediocre fighters, but seems to be 2 styles that mediocre fighters fill at times. It just happens to be, I don't know. But he's not the most explosive athlete here, but also I was kind of surprised that he does stay on his toes, on his feet, stays moving. And that could be effective here against kind of a slow, plodding stand-up guy in Silva. And if Silva isn't able to get you down, I don't know how else he wins a fight, to be honest with you. So one of the things I did notice with Williams is that there's a lack of volume with his shots. He'll be bouncing on his feet and just throw single shots and put a lot of weight into him, throw him kind of heavy. And I think he's going to leave himself open getting grabbed by Hannibal, and I think he gets to the ground, and I'll be nice to Mr. Williams and say a round 2 submission for Hannibal. But nice. I'll take Silva by round 2 submission.
Fair play. Okay, Claudio Silva comes into this fight 4-0 inside the UFC. He had a 4-year layoff, and then since returning, he's gone 2-0. And I've been at both of those fights live. The first one being in Liverpool against Nordine Taleb, where surprisingly to myself, yourself, Brooks, and pretty much everyone else, Claudio Silva actually rocked him on the feet before he subbed him. So that was quite surprising to see. That didn't happen in his next fight against Danny Roberts. Danny Roberts was the one who was doing all the rocking in that fight. But for some reason, Danny Roberts isn't that intelligent. Claudio Silva was able to get what he needed, the takedown. You basically covered it yourself. Claudio Silva is a very, very good jiu-jitsu practitioner. Looking at his last fight, you'd have to be a little bit worried because he doesn't want to strike. He wants you on the mat, and that's where he wants to fight you. But yeah, you was nice in your breakdown with Cole Williams. He's 35 years old. He's pursuing his dream, and you watch these fights, and he doesn't look the greatest. And I saw him quite flat-footed, and you basically mentioned that in other words, and he's pursuing his dream.
Well, one of the fights I saw, he really was like, it may have been only one fight, but one of the fights I watched, he really was on his toes and bouncing around. But then I looked it up, and it was against I think the guy was like 4-17. So, yeah, so I would be bouncing on my toes too, I guess. But
yeah.
Go ahead.
So yeah, we basically see the same thing, mate. And I've got down exactly what you've taken. So I'll take Claudio Silva to get a submission after the 5-minute mark. Maybe the first round, but I'll be pretty surprised if Cole Williams was able to take out Claudio Silva on the feet, and guys like Nordine Taleb and Danny Roberts couldn't. So, and Claudio Silva even has a win over Leon Edwards. A younger Leon Edwards, but yeah, I'll take Claudio Silva round 2 sub.
Yeah, and interesting enough, he was going to face Ramazan Emeev, who has visa issues as usual. So he was going to be a 2-1 underdog in that fight.
Yeah,
so,
I was going to take Ramazan in that one.
They don't have odds available for this, but I would guess that would be nearly reversed here with I would guess it'd be nearly reversed with Claudio being a 2-1 favorite now. That would be my assumption.
Yeah, maybe like plus 350 for Cole Williams.
Yeah,
maybe.
I mean, I just don't know how you take him other than by a blind guess and hoping that Silva is not the most impressive guy in there, but I think he's going to be able to handle an older Cole Williams who hasn't fought since September of last year, so nearly a year off for some reason. So
fair play. Okay, moving us on into the next one. We have Scott Holtzman versus the Maestro, and I'll be breaking down Scott. Comes into this fight, 5 wins, 3 losses inside the UFC. For a good couple of years, I looked at Scott Holtzman as just like an average 155er. And I'm sure most people hearing that, still probably hold those views that Scott Holtzman, just an average 155er, probably lucky to be in the UFC. But I really changed my view on that. It was the Alan Patrick fight, and that fight, Scott Holtzman really showed me a lot in that fight. So I kind of re-evaluated my opinion of Scott. He's a really tough guy. He'll walk you forward, walk down on you, stalk you, and look for heavy shots. He's a good, not the best grappler in the world, but not the worst grappler. So he's always able to implement grappling when he can. You look at his last fight against Nick Lentz, I took him in that fight. Not the best performance, but, it was kind of close. The tide was turning a little bit towards the end, but, Nick Lentz done a good job. So like I said, Scott Holtzman, man, I've changed my opinion on the guy. He's very tough. He's never been finished, which proves how tough he is. And I'm going to take him here. I think Scott Holtzman is able to walk down the Maestro and land a big hook or an overhand right. So I'll take him in round number 1 via TKO.
Gotcha. I will be breaking down Hyun Ma, also known as the Maestro, one of the best heads of hair in all of MMA. I'll say that. His fighting is decent. Again, we're going to try to be nice here. 16-9-3 overall for Hyun Ma. He's 3-3 in the UFC. Unfortunately, when he loses real hard to explosive athletes. His nickname of the Maestro. He is all about orchestrating those game plans. So all three of his wins basically out game planning, out maneuvering his opponents. So I think this is a super close matchup here. I think that with the Maestro at times, his offensive output just kind of is not there. While not always the most effective, I think one thing with Holtzman is he's always aggressive, moves forward. I don't think either guy's going to put the other guy away here. So I could see the lack of aggressiveness costing Maestro, basically. I think Holtzman will be a little bit larger, although I get Ma will be a little bit longer slightly. But I think Holtzman will be a little larger and stronger overall and quicker. So I'm going to take Holtzman, and I'll take him by a decision. I don't see either guy getting a finish here. So I think this goes 3 rounds. So I'll take Hot Sauce Holtzman by decision over Hyun Ma. And we go to the odds here. And if you didn't get Holtzman early, you're not wanting him now. Probably minus 325, opened at minus 200. Wow. And Hyun Ma is now plus 250. So
a lot of faith going into my boy Scott Holtzman.
Yeah, I think he's one of the biggest favorites on the card here. I'm pretty sure. In fact, I'm looking. He is the largest favorite on the card. That's shocking.
Yeah, well, maybe people saw that Alan Patrick fight, and they, just like me, we just look at Scott Holtzman a little different.
If you pick his greatest performance by leaps and bounds by any other performance, then yes, but he has not fought like that in any other fight.
Mm-hmm.
So
even against Nick Lentz, it wasn't the same performance, but
no, it wasn't.
I've got to stay with him. If he proves me wrong in this one, then maybe I'll look at it again. But
the only thing I'm hesitant about and why I think about betting on the underdog here is just because the way that Dongyan loses in general is by getting starched. And when he's able to go 15 minutes, it seems he's able to, I'm going to use my pun again since it seems to just go on deaf ears, orchestrate a good game plan as the Maestro. Mm-hmm. You get it?
Yeah, I got it. Nice.
Because an orchestra, a Maestro conducts an orchestra. So
perfect.
I was saying, okay. Well, moving on here. We'll be moving on here to one of my many boys in Gerald GM3 Meerschaert. And this is another thing with this channel is I will not pretend when I'm not breaking down one of my boys. Because I think it's worth noting as I'm breaking down the fight. Because I'm just being honest. But I've always liked Gerald Meerschaert since he's gotten in the UFC. He's taking on another guy I really like in Trevin Giles. So I'm a big fan of this middleweight fight in general. I think it's a really good one and quite relevant for not necessarily even the top 15, but the top 30, which is still relevant at a division like 185. That's how good it is. So Gerald Meerschaert out of Rufus Sports still is 29-11 overall. He has 6 TKOs and 20 submissions in those 29 wins. He's now 4-3 in the UFC. He's got 3 submissions of Brian James, Tom Gigliotti, and Oscar Pichota. So not the best wins, honestly. And then he has a TKO of Eric Spicely, which we saw how tough Spicely was against Darren Wynn in his last fight. So that's a pretty big statement to be able to get a TKO there. And his losses came to Kevin Holland in a fight he won, in my opinion. Jack Hermanson, who completely outgrappled him and shocked me, frankly. And then Thiago Santos, who ended him in the second round. Basically, Meerschaert, kind of similarly to Hyun Ma, when he's not dominated or not finished early, he tends to win and dominate himself. So that's a little different there. But anyways, I think Meerschaert has shown that taking his time to get to the big show has helped in some ways, and I think in other ways maybe has hurt him. He has looked, I think, pretty strong since arriving, but at times he's just not the guy he's in there with is just way out of his class and really stands out. But I think Giles has shown, while he's no joke, I think has shown he's on level or slightly below the level of Meerschaert. Meerschaert, I think, has stronger striking than most people realize. He has an aggressive wrestling game, but at times takes position over submission and over potential damage. So that's hurt him, particularly against Kevin Holland. I think this is a really close matchup that we could end up getting a stand-up war if Giles has his way and wins the grappling battle against Meerschaert. I would think Meerschaert's looking to test Giles on the ground in this matchup, as Cummings did against Giles as well. So, yeah, Giles can be tricky in, to get down, especially early and when he still has his cardio. But I think as he gets tired, the movement slows down. His legs seem to get a little bit heavier. And I think that he may have trouble making his way back to his feet as this fight goes. So I actually see quite a few takedowns from Meerschaert, and Giles being able to get up initially somewhat easier, and then it starting to drain him. And I will take Gerald to get a submission in round 2. I think this is going to be a back and forth fight. I think it's really close, but I'll take Gerald by submission in round 2. So I got another round 2 submission. I think it's my second round 2 or third round 2 submission on the night. So second round finish so far tonight, but round 2 submission for GM3.
Trevin Giles comes into this fight 2-1 inside the UFC. He took that 1.5 year layoff, then returned against Pat Cummins. Looked fairly okay against Pat Cummins until like the 3rd round, where he started to fade quite a bit, got clipped on the feet, and then got choked out. So, the debut back was, a strong like 7 until the 3rd round, and then it just dropped. Looking at Meerschaert's last performance against Kevin Holland, we both took him in that fight. I did have him winning that fight like 2-1. But at the same time, man, he looked so tired after that 1st round of grappling. Kevin Holland was extremely tired as well. Bit of a weird fight, but yeah, like looking at both guys here, no matter what pick I take, there's a worry for both sides. So the worry for Trevin would be, he can be fighting a good fight and then the 3rd round comes and he just fades. And to say he got clipped on the feet, then choked, is quite surprising. He has shown that he likes to end up on top on the mat. And Gerald Meerschaert, he's shown that he can strike. If the fight isn't grappling, he has shown that he can strike. So it's a bit of a strange one. I feel like this is a little bit like Figueiredo and Pantoja. I feel like whoever does better in the other guy's world probably wins the fight. So if Trevin's able to end up on top at some point, or not get taken down, or stuff a takedown, I'd see him winning the fight. If Meerschaert is able to establish like side control within like 2 minutes and make Giles work, then maybe he's going to take over and feel more comfortable striking when they get back up, if they do get back up. So it's one of those ones. It's a really tough one. I'm going to take Trevin Giles via TKO in round 2. And the reasoning behind that is, if Meerschaert doesn't get it done when a lot of grappling comes up, he looked very tired after like 5 minutes against Kevin Holland. So I'm assuming that's the same kind of thing, but I could be proven wrong, because Trevin Giles could also be very tired. So yeah, I'll take Trevin Giles via TKO in round number 2.
Yeah, very well. This is a very good disagreement. So this is number 3 for us, I believe. And yeah, one thing that I kind of hear you talking about, and I understand, is, if he gets tired. But Meerschaert has finished 26 of his 29 wins, and he's been, I believe, finished in 2 of his 3, or a bunch of his losses. So
it's a tough one.
He may just finish in part because he's good, in part because he realizes that the cardio and gas tank is an issue for him. So perhaps if he doesn't get that finish within the first 2 rounds, I think both guys have questions in a lot of similar areas. So it's a tough one. Fair disagreement. Again, you're on the favorite side here. Giles at -160 and Meerschaert plus 135.
That could be a little bit closer come fight night. This is a very tough fight to call. Both guys have question marks, and you're going to get answers in that 1st round. But -160 isn't too bad for Trevin. Maybe get on that now if it does start to creep the other way. But I reckon it probably closes like -140. So I'll probably wait.
That's fair. All right. And we're moving on to the next fight here, and this is at 125
Hmm.
between Antonina, sorry, Shevchenko and Lucy Pudilova. I will be calling Antonina Shevchenko Antonina for the rest of this breakdown, as
Hmm.
she is not Shevchenko.
I'm with you.
Antonina is 34 years old, 7-1 now, 2 TKOs. She is 1-1 in the UFC. She's a Dana White Contender Series winner. She'll take your shot of apple juice. She finished with knees, but she definitely seems to fight very different from her sister. She fights a lot taller, not and with her head more straight up, steps back in a straight line quite a bit. Not as well rounded. I do like how she uses the Muay Thai clinch at times to control her opponent, like she did on the Contenders series. And she did get taken down where she was able to reverse the position and do a little bit of ground and pound, but it's pretty clear this is a weakness for her as a ground. She really lacked aggressiveness in her fight against Modafferi. She accepted being controlled on the ground and pinned against the cage. So I think this is going to be a pretty straight up kickboxing fight here, though. And I think aggressiveness and output can be a difference for Lucy, perhaps. But I think it will be kept on the feet. And I think in this matchup, I see Antonio winning decision. I think she may be cautious on takedowns later on, maybe. But if she gets taken down, she leaves herself a little open to subs. And that's where maybe we see more wrestling from Lucy than we've ever seen to take advantage. But I don't see that happening. I think Antonina wins a close decision.
Fair play. Okay, Lucy Pudilova comes into this fight 2 wins, 3 losses inside the UFC. I've said it 2 or 3 times now on this channel. Lucy Pudilova is one of my favorite female fighters. She's got that Nate Diaz style where she just walks forward and shows you how tough she is, and she just tries to outstrike you. And she just has that very dirty style where she's going to be bloody, you're going to be bloody, and there's going to be, a lot of moments in the fight that look ugly, and that's basically how you're going to beat Antonina. So we saw Modafferi be able to close the distance and use the grappling up against the fence. If Lucy Pudilova finds herself 5 or 6 times in a round up against the fence with Antonina landing knees, elbows, uppercuts, you can pretty much bank that Pudilova has won those rounds. So Antonina's going to spend the fight on the outside. Just like you said, she isn't like her sister. She's not as well-rounded. You mentioned the Thai clinch, which is something she will look to do. It will work against lower-level competition, but if she does that against Lucy Pudilova, she's going to get tripped and she's going to find herself on her back. But she is still gonna fight on the outside. She's gonna circle. I believe she will be the quicker kickboxer. So yeah, it's a tough one because once again, if Lucy Pudilova makes it dirty, and it's pretty much always dirty when she fights, she's for a good chance of winning. If Antonina can keep the distance, keep it kicking distance, and really outland Pudilova in those rounds and not get clinched, then it was her round. It's a tough one, but I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to take Antonina Shevchenko. I just think she's quite a bit quicker than Pudilova. And Pudilova maybe not realizing that the clinch is the best way to win. So maybe she'll feel happy to trade more than Modafferi did. So I'll take Antonina via decision.
Okay. That is an agreement there. For her Lucy being your favorite fighter, you never pick her.
Yeah, it's really tough. I took her. I think the last time I took her was against Aldana, and I think I actually scored her that fight. It was very close.
Yeah,
but just her
that's
style.
most Aldana. Yeah, every Aldana fight's close. So Shevchenko minus 165, which I think is a good price for her. Plus 135 for Pudilova.
Yeah. I mean, she
was
minus 3. Yeah, I know you was going to ask. Minus 3 against Modafferi, mate, or something ridiculous like that.
And we thought that was the deal. I remember. We were like, oh, man, what a deal.
Yeah.
Like, we're getting Shevchenko against Modafferi at under 600. And now she's hardly a favorite. It's just,
It's
lower level women's MMA. I'll
yeah.
say it once and I'll say it
I feel like that
ridiculous.
Modafferi win really done something in that pick against Maya, but
I mean, anytime you're a high level MMA female competitor and you lose to Modafferi, it makes things weird for a while, I'm sure.
yeah.
So, you want to move us into our next fight here?
Okay, this is the end of the prelims. This is Mickey Gall versus Salim Touahri.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take that.
Yep.
And I'll be breaking down Salim. Comes into this fight 0-2 inside the UFC. He's primarily a grappler. I believe he's a brown belt, maybe even a black belt at this point. Same as Mickey Gall, brown belt, maybe even a black belt at this point. I'm not too sure. Both guys are grapplers primarily. And when they're not in the clinch, Salim likes to use hooks, overhands, and uppercuts. They're mainly power shots with his fists. Mickey Gall likes to use his kicks when they're not in the clinch. So thinking of the fight like that, knowing they're both grapplers, stylistically it sounds quite fun. I believe Mickey Gall is the stronger grappler. I think he's the bigger welterweight. But then you look at his last fight against Diego Sanchez and you think, well, if a small welterweight like Sanchez is taking you down at will, then maybe you're not so strong after all. But then you have to think to yourself, Diego Sanchez is a vet, and that's just what Diego Sanchez has done his whole career. So you can't really look at this and go, Salim's going to be stronger because Mickey Gall is taken down by Sanchez. I think Mickey Gall is going to be the stronger guy here in the clinch. But it's very interesting because when they're not in the clinch, who's going to be the better guy here? It's hard to say because Salim has power in his hands, and Mickey Gall, to land kicks, he's going to be in distance of receiving a power shot. So it's very interesting. But one thing I did notice with Salim is he slowed down a lot after the first round against Warley Alves, and there was a lot of grappling in that round. So that was surprising to see. So if it goes out of the first round, I think Mickey Gall's going to sub him because of that. So I'll take Mickey Gall via submission in round number 2.
Okay, I will be breaking down Mickey Gall, the 6'2", 27-year-old now, welterweight, 5'2" with 5 submissions, 5-2 with 5 submissions, 4-2 in the UFC, coming off that ground and pound loss versus Diego, where he ended up with a kidney failure after the fight, I think. Mm-hmm. We all know what Mickey does. He goes in there, tries to get a hold of you, little stand-up, throws a few kicks, uses those long limbs, throws some wide hooks maybe, and hopes to sink in hooks of a different variety and get your back and get a rear naked choke. Mm-hmm. When he's been unable to do that, he's been pretty thoroughly physically overwhelmed, both by Diego Sanchez and by Randy Brown. Here he's fighting a guy who I think he's going to be able to physically dominate, frankly, in Salim, and he's going to be able to get the fight where he wants it. So far, Salim hasn't shown too much in the octagon, but I do think that he rises without an impressive performance here. He's gone. And I think that he has a good opponent to possibly show off some of his skills. I think if Salim can keep it standing for the first half of the fight, he'll shake Gall's confidence, and I question Gall's ability to take a shot. And I think he can be put away, not with too much difficulty. But I kind of think, I've used this word before with Gall, and obviously I think you know where I'm going. I think Gall's a mental midget. And I think if you lose to someone like Salim Touahri here, you show it. And I'm just not sold on Gall as a UFC competitor at all. I think a loss would really, really expose him here. And I think he's feeling a lot of pressure and going to lack a little confidence in there. And I think Salim gets a decision win to keep his job and just overall put the nail in Mickey Gall's coffin for me. I'm completely off that bandwagon.
Wow.
So
fair play.
Not that. So I'm
Is
taking
that the
a shot
fourth disagreement?
That's the fourth.
Wow.
Yeah, and I don't think we have odds for him yet. Not that I'm seeing, at least.
Okay. So, I'll take a check when we move into the next one. See what I've got.
Yeah, but I would assume that Gall will be the favorite based on just overall name recognition.
Oh no, I've got him. Nope. We have here Mickey Gall plus 105. Salim minus 125. So you've got the favorite there.
Okay, I think he fights grappling Cacao here, and I think he does have good enough grappling to where Mickey's going to have to use something besides that to win a fight, and I think that Salim is able to do so. So we'll see.
Fair disagreement.
Salim needs this win. I was more impressed than many in his Nakamura fight also. That's another fight I want to point out to some people.
That was a close one.
It was really close, and Nakamura is 33-9. Like he is not impressive. I understand that, and he's still 33-9. Very difficult to win against, and especially when a decision against Kiete, I believe, has probably 3 or 4 split decisions. I think in the UFC, but maybe I'm wrong. Either way, it's an interesting fight. I just Mickey Gall is in that category of the Roxanne Modafferi's of this world, where I just can't pick them. Sorry.
It's a tough one. It's a very tough one.
It's really hard. Yeah, I really, especially after how much I nailed that Diego Sanchez-Mickey Gall fight, it kind of scares me how much. But we'll see. I think this being on short notice for Gall also does him no favors. And he cuts quite a bit of weight to get to 170, so he's doing this on a shorter weight cut camp as well. So just those, I take all those into account. Salim was getting ready for a really tough fight against a good guy in Salim. So yeah, I'm taking all that into account here, and go ahead and move us forward to the next fight. First fight on the main card.
Yep, we have Darko Stosic versus Kennedy, and I'm not going to even attempt it.
Nzechkuwu.
And my co-host, of course, will all the time, because he's courageous like that. That's how we do it here.
Yes. America.
Okay,
Sorry, go ahead.
Darko Stosic comes into this fight 1-1 inside the UFC. I was at his debut live in Germany. Fairly decent performance in his debut. It was quite quick against Jeremy Kimball. Stuffed a takedown, ended up on top, and the ground and pound was pretty ferocious. And then in his next fight was against Devin Clark, and the grappling was the difference. Devin Clark, being Devin Clark, wearing on you on the fence with those huge tree trunk legs, getting a few takedowns here and there, and then, late round 2, third round, Darko Stosic hasn't got the gas anymore, and Devin Clark's done his job. Kennedy, I took Paul Craig in that fight, so I got that one right. So we have 2 guys here where I've nailed all of their fights in the UFC, so this is a strange position to be in, making a pick. I feel Kennedy was extremely cautious in that debut against Paul Craig. Didn't disengage from the clinch when he could, which was just stupid. But I felt he was quite scared in that debut. He was more scared than Paul Craig, which is, surprising, especially for a debut. Darko, he has power in his hands. If he connects with your head flush, you're going to sleep. But obviously, has shown conditioning issues in his last fight. But, Devin Clark is a decent guy, and if he wears on you, you're pretty much going to get tired. So this is a strange one, man. I feel Kennedy is not going to be the same guy who fought in his debut. So yeah, I'm going to put my faith in a guy I picked against in his debut. I'm going to take Kennedy here. He's very tall. He's very long. And I think he's learnt a lot from that debut. And I think he's going to be quite a bit more aggressive here. So I'm going to take him actually to get a finish. I'm going to take Kennedy via TKO in round number 2.
Very, very well. And I will be breaking down Kennedy. And I know it looks scary. It's Nzechkuwu. That's it.
Nzechkuwu.
Nzechkuwu. That's it. So I get that it looks intimidating, but Nzechkuwu. Very easy. Kennedy Nzechkuwu. And I think as we go through his UFC career, I think people are going to really start to know his name. I've been a fan of his. I'm still a fan of his after his debut. Super frustrated with his debut, of course, because Paul Craigman. But this guy out of my favorite camp of 2019.
I was going to ask.
Yeah, same as Jeff Neal, same as a lot of these really good guys right now. He's 26 years old. He's, I believe, 6'4", so I don't have it here, but he's 6-1 overall, 4 TKOs. He won on the Contender Series twice, with one of the ways coming with the second way coming by way of knockout or head kick knockout. He's a tall, good-looking kickboxer, from what I've been able to see, and in his UFC debut even. We also were seeing in the fight with Craig, he made the one error he couldn't make against him, which was staying on the ground and planting his long limbs for basically 2 rounds, and then he got subbed at the very end. So he just got a little too comfortable in there. The mortal error against Darko here would be backing up with his head straight up and leaving himself open to those overhand shots from the shorter guy in Darko. I think if he fights at his range here on the feet and uses good wrestling takedown defense, he's got this all day, in my opinion. I think that he needs to watch for rushes and overhand shots and potential wrestling from Darko, but I think this should be a kickboxing bout with the movement and overall striking of Kennedy. And if this is on the feet, I really like Kennedy against a lot of guys at 205, frankly. I think he can do a lot of damage here as he works on his well-roundedness. I think the loss to Craig will be one of the best things for his career at the end of the day, and I do think that Darko needs this to be in the clinch and dirty to have a chance. I'm going to say Kennedy does not allow that to happen, and I've been back and forth on a finish, but I'll say Kennedy by decision.
Nice. I'm glad we agree on that, because like I said, I took Paul Craig and you took Kennedy, and you're sticking, so that shows a lot to me. So I'm feeling a little bit better about picking Kennedy.
I mean, it's a huge if, but if he does get subbed there, he doesn't lose. So, I mean, I'm not sure that Kennedy would have gotten much of a different matchup here in his second matchup. I think this is an appropriate matchup whether you beat Craig or lost there. So I think if he maybe would have won that fight against Craig, he would be given someone he's just not ready for at this stage. So it may be for the best having that early loss to slow down a little bit of the progression that sometimes the UFC does, especially in this weight division, or in a few, but this one is one of those. So we agree. I got Kennedy as well, and we are moving on to
the odds before we move.
Oh, my bad. Plus 105 for Kennedy. I thought I said that.
Wow.
And
Plus 105.
Yep, minus 135 for Darko. I'm seeing plus 120 on some sites for Kennedy.
Interesting.
So I'm pretty
so a lot
surprised.
of people have, they're not taking him after that debut.
I think they're putting more stock into Darko's power. So.
Wow, interesting. Okay.
And now we move on to 155 here. And
125. Hannah Goldy and Miranda Granger.
Oh, sorry. I forgot to... Let's see. Okay. Yeah, no problem. I forgot that fight was added. So, yeah. Go ahead and you're breaking
I'll
down
lead us off.
Goldy. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Hannah Goldy. Comes into this fight 5-0 as a pro. She fought on the Contender Series week 1, so like 6 weeks ago, 7 weeks ago. She didn't get a contract on that night, but here she is 6-7 weeks later on a main card. So, when people complain about people not getting a contract, like Brendan Launay at the start, these guys can pop up, or girls, they can pop up anywhere. Looking at that debut, I can remember us, Brooks, saying we weren't too impressed. This was quite boring. And we basically said that on the prediction video we did. And it turned out to be that, not too impressed. And I've looked at Miranda Granger. She seems to be a grappler for the most part. But it's just low-level women's MMA, man. Like, her opponents don't have great records. We don't really know who her opponents are. She's looking pretty decent for the most part against them, but I just, this is a low-level fight. If you're going to bet on this fight, and you're the type of person to do like 4, 5, 6 parlays on the night, don't put it in more than one. Just put this in one parlay. No one really knows what's going to happen here, but as always, we're going to make a prediction on it. I think Hannah Goldy might be the more superior boxer and kickboxer. So that's what I'm deciding on here. So I'll take Hannah Goldy via a very close decision.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised here because I kind of disagree with you. I think that Granger is legit. I think that she is worthy of putting in several parlays. I think I will be putting her in several parlays here. I think Hannah Goldy is being sacrificed here.
Okay.
I was not at all impressed by Hannah Goldy against, was it Kayla Robinson?
That was it.
That was that. And I mean, Kayla Robinson nearly won that fight, or Kayla Thompson. I don't know. It was one of those things.
Yeah,
but either way, like a really not impressive girl, and she wasn't able to really put on a performance there. She didn't get a contract for a reason, and then for whatever reason, Miranda Granger hadn't been signed yet. She's one of the better strawweights currently in here, and she just won on the 25th of May. She's gotten finishes by submission in 5 of her 6 wins. A lot of them coming really early, and yes, they're against unknown girls, but there's an 8-3 in there, a 4-2, a 4-1. Hannah Goldy's only 5-0, and Hannah Goldy's fought no one of note. And I've been able to see some of her fights, and she also has 5 amateur fights in which she was able to get finishes, some coming in the 3rd round and a couple 2nd round finishes, and a few of those coming by TKO as well. So I think that Granger could be a legit new girl here. I'm looking for her to make a debut similar to Vivian Araujo, except she's actually at her weight class. And I'm not sure why she was added to this card, but I've got to imagine it's not to give Hannah Goldy a showcase. In all honesty, I think it's a little bit of a showcase fight for Miranda Danger Granger. So it's fine. We have a difference in opinion here. It is lower level women's MMA. So maybe after a fight, I watch that, I'm like, I don't know how she was ever that way, but from what I've been able to see, and I think some decent competition in there, I don't think Hannah Goldy is that at all. And I think Hannah Goldy should come out in a lamb costume because she's being sacrificed, in my opinion. So I'm going to, this is recorded. I'm going to have to answer for this next week if she shit. But I am saying Hannah Goldy goes down to Miranda Danger Granger, and it's going to be a 1st round submission loss.
Fair play. And the odds, I'll tell you, are with me. We have Hannah Goldy minus 200, Granger plus 160.
So this may be, who's that Australian guy who I really believed against Sadiq Youssef?
Mokhtarian?
Mokhtarian. One of the Mokhtarians.
I was on that with you. Plus 6.
And we had, so you know what? Bring it on if you want to get behind Hannah Goldy. I will be betting on Miranda Danger. And I will be betting.
It's low level, man. 5-0 versus 6-0. No one knows. I've seen Hannah Goldy, so I guess the known commodity here I've been less impressed with than the slightly unknown commodity in Miranda Danger Granger. And her nickname rhymes with her last name, so gotta pick her. It's all sound judgment here. Go ahead and lead us into the next fight there. Okay, we have Joaquim Silva versus Nasrat Haqparast. And I'll be breaking down Nasrat. Comes into this fight 2-1 inside the UFC. I was at his fight in Germany when he was fighting my boy Mark Diakisi. The Germans weren't too happy with me in the crowd with that fight. But Nasrat, man, that night, like, he was just so good. Like, he closed the distance on Mark Diakisi just pretty much the whole fight. Like, you look at that fight and you say, well, if Nasrat can implement grappling and closed kicking distance, he's probably going to win. But it wasn't even close. It was like that distance was closed so quick, and it remained closed for like 15 minutes. He even dropped Mark Diakisi at one point. It was just such a masterclass performance. I was just so impressed. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing from this guy. And to be honest with you, I'm sure a lot of people listening to this agree with me, because in his next fight, he was a minus 900. And that's just insane, because that was his first win in the UFC. You know, he lost his debut. And then to come back and fight like that was just, it was mesmerizing. Like, you look at Diakisi and a lot of people thought, well, this guy's just becoming a flop now. But then you see his performance against Joe Duffy, where I stayed with him, and
Thanks for a reminder. Thank you.
He looked to be back. So then you have to go back to the Nasrat fight against him and say, well, look, Mark Diakisi was there, but there was someone else who was there, and they were far, far better, and that was Nasrat. So, you know, I'm on this guy's train before it even starts. I really like this guy. For anyone who feels like this was an emotional breakdown for Nasrat, I always put my money where my mouth is, and, you know, just like you said earlier on, Brooks, you're going to make it no lie when you break down a guy who you're a real fan of, and that's what I do with Figueiredo. That's what you do. I'm sure all of us have our favourites. But like I said earlier, Lucy Pudilova is one of my favourite, and I just can't take her here. So I'm never biased, but I really believe that Nasrat can be a special fighter at 155. Joaquim Silva, you know, we know how powerful he is. Approaching the late second and third, conditioning really starts to be his downfall. And then when you look at Nasrat's pressure, you have to put 2 and 2 together for me. So, yeah, I'm going to take Nasrat. I'm going to take him to get a round 3 submission.
Very good. I will be right. So you're taking a submission over Neto BJJ Joaquim Silva.
Yeah.
5'8", 30-year-old is 11-1 overall. The BJJ black belt got 5 TKOs and 1 submission, so has a little bit of the Jorge Grigel effect. 4-1 in the UFC, losing to Vince Pichel at 170. Since getting to 155, he was able to outpace Jared Gordon and finish him in the 3rd round by TKO, but both guys were exhausted. And like I said, for being known as Neto BJJ, it really seems like he's used his BJJ to feel comfortable on the feet. And it's been pretty effective. Joaquim is like a real survivor in there. He finds a way to win fights he shouldn't be winning. I think that this is going to be another really close battle of attrition here with Nasrat, but I think Nasrat is, this may sound weird, just way better at battling attrition. I think that he is a master in distance, and his distance is staying really in the other guy's face. I think that we maybe have to be seeing a little bit of Silva's BJJ skill in this one, both on defense, because I think Nasrat's going to be looking to take him down at times and to help sweep and get possible top control for Silva. So I don't think that Nasrat's going to be looking to stand and trade with Joaquim a lot, especially early. So I do think Nasrat is going to be wrestling a lot here. But if Silva's able to defend it, he can definitely contend on the feet as well. I just like Nasrat after that lackluster debut. He has not looked like the same guy. He's been a mini Gastelum in there, basically.
For real. Yeah.
And that with all due respect, because that's a great guy to be compared to. I'm excited to see Gastelum come back at some point, too. I missed the guy. But Nasrat, I think he could I agree with you. I think he may get a finish late, and I'm going to take a 3rd round TKO. Yeah. So I'll take a 3rd round TKO for Nasrat. Overall, Nasrat is one of my most confident guys on the card, even more so than Danger Granger.
What's the odds?
Oh man, I'm so afraid to watch that fight now. If Danger Granger, this looks like a shit con. Whatever. Lower level MMA. So Joaquim Silva is a plus 195 underdog, minus 250 for Nasrat. I'm surprised it's only at that, so I'm fine with it.
Yeah, that's respectable, man.
But Joaquim is 4-1 again in the UFC and just finds a way to win. I'm sure if I went to Tapology and looked at the fights, I'm sure Joaquim's been an underdog in at least 2 or 3 of his fights in the UFC. He's found a way to win.
Well, he was a slight favorite in his loss. Do you remember who his loss was to?
Yeah, Vince Pichel. I said that.
Let's go. Okay.
Yeah,
shout out to Vince. Move us on into to the co-main.
I can't believe this is a co-main event in 2019 on national television, but whatever. One of these guys has really found his way into my heart over the last couple of years, I'll be honest. That's Clay Guida, and the Carpenter, who early on in my UFC fandom became one of the first guys I really would watch and dislike. For some reason, he just bothered me. And I just always wanted to see him lose. And I don't know what happened, but over the last few years, I've become a huge Clay Guida fan and respect the hell out of him. I also do have his opponent here in Jim 810 Miller, which I don't know what that stands for, but maybe you can tell us or not. I don't care. Clay the Carpenter Guida, I will be breaking down, and the 37-year-old who is losing hair by the millisecond. As you can see, each fight he comes out with still that mop, but it's missing a little patch in that front now. You kind of can see the skull, but whatever. He's 37, still fighting out Jackson Winklejohn. He's 35-18 with 17 KOs and 13 submissions. I've gone through the list of fighters he's fought before. You can go check it out. Pretty much anybody you can think of at 155 or 45, he's fought the guy. He's 15-11 overall. He's fought a couple different weight classes at this point. With Clay Guida, we know what we get at this point, and it's kind of shocking he's still able to do it for so long. And the level of some of the guys he's been in the span of this has been really amazing. He made RDA quit, broke his jaw, and many other guys. Still got that endless gas tank. Could be relentless. Looks like the same old Clay after his last fight against BJ. But that was against BJ. But this is another fight against a guy who's advanced in his UFC career for sure. And honestly, with Miller, it's not quite the same type of thing. Miller has been able to still compete, but he just had a renaissance in his last performance against Jason Gonzalez. Before that, it had been quite a while since Miller had rocked somebody, and he rocked Jason Gonzalez in round one and subbed him very quickly. So I do think that Guida can be rocked at this point, and Miller has that power still, but I don't think he's going to be able to finish Guida, and I think Guida's in his face for 15, and I'm going to take Clay Guida for a decision once again over Jim Miller in a fight of two guys in the twilights of their UFC career, but it became the main event or co-main event after Volkan and Latifi had to be withdrew from, so fair enough.
Yep, fair play. Okay, so Jim Miller comes into this fight 19 wins, 12 losses, and 1 draw. He's had 32 fights in the UFC. Clay Guida, a veteran, Jim Miller, a veteran. It's kind of crazy that these guys haven't fought each other. I remember you sending me that literally when this fight was confirmed. And it's going to be a strange fight. Both guys out of their prime. You mentioned Clay Guida has an endless gas tank, and that's for sure still. Jim Miller, that guy wears his heart on his sleeve. Very, very good at jiu-jitsu. His wrestling is very decent, and on the feet, he's a scrapper. So this is going to be a very fun fight. Clay Guida's going to use that weird, unorthodox style that he uses, where he just looks like he's had 10 Monster Energy drinks, and that just stays the whole 15 minutes, which is crazy. So yeah, it's a strange one. Jim Miller looked very good against Jason Gonzalez, like you said. I feel like whoever turns up better on the night wins this one, literally. And I know that can be said for any fight, and that's basically said for any fight, but I just feel that even more here with these two guys. So yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I think Clay Guida's going to be Clay Guida, using that weird, crazy style, maybe outpoint Jim Miller. But if Jim Miller gets a hold of him and takes his back and stuff like that, then Jim Miller really can win this fight. I agree. I'll take Clay Guida via decision.
It would not be the craziest thing in the world if Jim Miller wins by TKO here.
Yeah, or even that.
I think the submission or the decision will be the favorite, then the submission will be close, and then I think that you could get, if you really believe in Jim Miller, I really like this power against Jason Gonzalez, but I am also, for some reason, a Jason Gonzalez fan. So
even against Dustin Poirier, back in the day for Jim Miller, he was powerful. He still is.
Yeah, he's got sneaky power, and as many of the old fighters say, power is one of the last things to go in a lot of these fighters. So we're on the underdog here, my friend. Plus 155 for Clay.
Oh,
love it.
Wow,
love it.
That's heavy. Plus 155.
Yep.
Oh,
minus
nice.
180 for Jim Miller, and this fight card is. Where is this fight card taking place? Do you remember?
New Jersey. Okay,
so there we go. I'm glad I asked that. Jim Miller is fighting. It will be a hometown fight for Jim Miller.
Wow.
Jim Miller does fight on New Jersey. His family will be there. The last fight was the first fight his family had ever been there, and he came out, had the best performance. I do not believe it necessarily has something to do or not to do with the fight, but I believe that is resulting in these inflated odds. And if it is a close decision, most likely Jim Miller gets the nod.
Yeah.
So those are good things to take into account. I'm glad I asked where this was taking place, and that makes a lot of sense now. That Jim
Maybe
Miller,
one parlay or even two if I'm feeling it, but
yeah. I mean, having that, if this was in Phoenix, Arizona, I would have it in one or two more than that. But yeah, this being in New Jersey, Clay Guida now can't win a close decision. He has to win a clear decision. So, in my opinion, I think New Jersey is one of these places that's shown a little bit of favoritism at times. And so we'll see. But I'm still taking Clay Guida, but I'm a little less confident now, realizing it's in New Jersey, and that may sound like a weird reason to not be confident, but it takes away a 10 to 15% chance in a decision win for Guida, in my unscientific opinion.
Fair play.
I'm not an expert. No one is. We've been over this before, so I did go over the odds: plus 155, minus 180 for Miller. I think it should be closer to like a minus 140. Or even a pick 'em. I really am surprised Clay Guida is the underdog here. So we'll see. But you want to lead us into the main event of the evening?
It is time. Yes. Okay. The main event: Covington versus Robbie Lawler. I'll be breaking down Colby.
How many disagreements do we have going into this fight?
I believe we have 5.
5. Okay, so we went 2 over. Okay, fair enough. Go ahead.
Okay, Colby comes into this fight 9 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. Whether you like him or not, we all must agree that he is a relentless wrestler. His conditioning, his cardio is very, very good. As for striking, not the greatest. If Damian Maia can bloody your face, then you're not a striker. But Colby, he's accepted that. I'm sure he works on his striking, but most of what he does on the feet with striking is to be able to get into the clinch a little bit like Khabib. Everything he's throwing or coming forward with is to end up in the clinch. So that's what we're going to see here again for Colby. Robbie Lawler, we know about this guy. He's a beast. If he connects, you're going to get hurt. But he's had some wars, man. He's been around for some years now. He's out of his prime. If all honesty, I give him like 1 round, like a round and a half. After like the 7th or 8th minute mark, I think, the fight is really going to run away from Robbie Lawler. So for me, if Colby is in the fight, 2nd round midway through, I think the fight's really going to run away with him. He's going to get takedown after takedown, and he's just going to make Robbie work off of his back. And you look at the Ben Askren, the way Ben was able to get a hold of Robbie, and Robbie looked, pretty decent. He scrambled a few times, looked very decent. Really tried to get away from the clinch. But with Colby, man, it's just going to keep coming and coming and coming. So even when you get into that 4th round, Colby's fresh to go. He's bouncing on his feet. He's looking to close the distance with an explosion and go for the single leg or double leg. And he's very successful at doing it. Now, you look at his loss. He was in the clinch and he got subbed. I don't think Robbie Lawler's going to attempt that. If he does and gets a sub win, I'll be amazed. But I'm pretty sure everyone looking at Robbie Lawler here is picturing a TKO. If you take Robbie Lawler decision and that comes in, I take my hat off to you. But the only way Robbie wins for me is in those first 7 or 8 minutes. And, that's a small probability compared to Colby. I think after that, Colby just, it's a conditioning test. And I made a weird example to my girlfriend the other day. I said, like, if both of these guys got on a track and started running, and Robbie Lawler was given a half lap head start, and they had 5 laps, Colby would finish, and Robbie would still have like a lap and a half, 2 laps left. That's the difference in fitness for these guys. So yeah, I'm going to take Colby via a fairly dominant decision.
Okay, that was a pretty spot-on breakdown. I may not have too much to add, to be honest with you. Which is good because the pups are getting ready to play here, and they may make some noise here as we finish up here. Chico says, "What's up?" But ruthless Robbie Lawler, 37 years old now, 5'11", 170er, is 28-13-1 overall. He's now lost 2 straight 5-round decisions. 2 straight, losing a 5-round decision to RDA and then getting choked out by Askren. And he came very close to putting Ben out early in that one before being choked out. And I'm going to make a weird comparison, but last weekend, one of the other fights was Frota versus Robertson. And the first round, Frota was throwing up all those inverted triangles, really squeezing hard in the guard, just throwing up all sorts of crazy stuff. And even Joe Rogan was really admiring it. But what it led to was a gas Frota from round 2 on. And I think that while Lawler did show a ton of explosion in that Askren fight, if he would have kept trying to escape from the wrestling that way, he would have gassed within the first round or two. And that's part of the reason he was able to get grabbed so easily, I think. I think he exploded so much and put so much effort into that escape of the first takedown and trying to finish. And you can do that for a very small amount of time. If you don't put the guy away, you're in trouble. And I do think that at 37, the amount of wars has caught up to Lawler in a lot of ways. And Lawler, one of the things for Lawler, he definitely is not easy to take down, but he has become less durable on the feet and a little bit slower on the feet as time's gone. And I actually think Colby's going to experiment quite a bit with his stand-up here. I think it will become a wrestling match after round 2, but I think early on, Colby's going to try to make a little bit of a John Jones type of style message where it's like, I'll meet you at your style. And then I'm not saying he puts him away or knocks him out, but I think he can tire him out with the wrestling as time goes. And as the championship rounds come in, I think that a submission could possibly be in order. So I do think Lawler has some left, but giving him Colby Covington here is absurd. It doesn't make any sense from a matchmaking perspective for me. And I think it's pretty unfair to Robbie Lawler at this stage in his career. So I'm going to take Colby. I agree, like him or not, you got to respect him, and I do respect him. And I'll take Colby to get a round 4 submission win.
Nice.
So
taking the finish,
yeah.
I like it.
I'm going to go for the finish here. It could be very wrong, but we'll see. But either way, I'm very, very confident in Colby, and he is the minus 230 favorite. Robbie Lawler at now plus 180. So it opened at about this, and it's staying steady at this. So I'm surprised that so many people are picking up on Mr. Lawler, but fair enough. I've got Colby, and I'd say that my most confident are the 3 at the top, honestly. I think, or 3 towards the top in Colby, Guida, and Nazareth. So I really like all 3 of those guys. I think that fight of the night. I'll say fight of the night would be, that's kind of tough, but I'll say Clay Guida, Jim Miller's fight of the night.
Nice.
And that's really maybe wishful thinking, but I'll say that will be my fight of the night. And I have a couple underdogs I'm pretty confident in as well. Clay Guida, I'm fairly confident as an underdog, but I was fairly confident in Aubin Meerschaert as an underdog as well last week. So I'll always be straight up. It was so impressive. I'll always be straight up with everybody, though. And at the end of the day, we're all just passionate fans. And when you got passion, you believe that the way you're viewing it is correct. And if not, then you need to increase that passion and think about how you're looking at the fight, I guess. If you're not agreeing with your views on the fight, then I don't know why you're making them. So anyway.
So fight of the night for me, before we sign off. It's a tough one. The co-main you highlighted for fight of the night, that really could be fight of the night. But I'm going to say Joaquim Silva puts up a good war in the first round, and the next 10 minutes are very entertaining. So I'm going to take that one. And I think the main event could be very good for the first 10 minutes or 7 or 8 minutes until Robbie gets tired. Or, we're assuming that Robbie's going to get tired. Robbie has the power to put him away in those 7 minutes, but that's the probability I'm giving Robbie Lawler. So if you're listening to this still and you're taking Robbie Lawler, I respect that pick because he does have a legit chance in that first round and half of the second. But after that, you'd have to assume that Colby's going to run away with it. So appreciated doing this breakdown with you as always, Brooks. We appreciate everyone, and we're gonna end this podcast because we've got to get out the Contender Series too. So
all right. Peace out, everybody. Thank you for listening. Enter the giveaway and everything. If you're making a comment, I just don't get where you're not making a second comment to enter the giveaway. So anyways, we appreciate you all. Thank you all for listening, and we will be back next week for whatever card that is, because there's a card next week and the week after that and the week after that. And I'm not complaining. I love it, but I haven't had time to look at what it is yet. Enjoy the fights, everybody, and we'll see you down in the comments. Peace out.
Peace.